Okay, so we're at one of the entrances to this mine. So I'll tell you a bit about it. Well, this is called the George and Charlotte mine, named after King George III and Queen Charlotte. This was a copper mine. They started digging here in the year 1718. Started then, and the mine kept working until it eventually closed in the year 1868. Working for 150 years. Look, the copper they were looking for, like lots of other metals, you find them underground, you find them in a vertical, almost vertical stripe down through the ground, like a slice down through the ground. To get in and dig out that copper, they haven't just dug one tunnel into the hill. As well as this tunnel, there are another 3 up above here, further up in the hill, and then 4 down below this one. So there are 8 tunnels which go across into this hill. Tunnels going across in a mine we call levels. So we have 8 levels. The other type of tunnel that you get, as well as the levels, are shafts. Shafts are tunnels which go straight up or straight down. There's the top of one of those shafts just here. This one was used so that people could get down to work in some of the tunnels below. There would be ladders which zigzagged down through there so people could climb down into some of the lower levels. So that's an introduction to the mine. As we go through the mine, we will stop a few times and I will explain a bit about the work that people were doing. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask questions whenever you like. Models of miners showing some of the jobs they would do to dig these tunnels. Because the way they were digging, well, it changed a few times over the 150 years that this mine was open. When they started work here, back in 1718, people had very simple tools. A miner may just have a pick, like a hammer with a point on one side, a pick for chipping away at the rock, and then a shovel to move the bits they had broken off. Trying to dig a tunnel through hard rock like this with just a pick and a shovel was very slow, hard work. A miner working for a month with just simple tools, just a pick and shovel, digging for a month through rock like this would get them a tunnel from where I am stood just here. A month's work would get them a tunnel to about here. So not very far for a whole month's work. So they had to think of ways to dig a bit quicker. The idea that came along was that they could start using gunpowder. Using gunpowder to explode and break the rock. To do that, the first thing they had to do was drill a hole into the rock. Back when this started, they had no machines to drill with. They would have to do it by hand. And this is what the models above the front of the train and above the back of the train show. So you would have one miner holding a metal bar like this one with a sharpened end. They could hold that against the rock, twisting it round and round. As they twisted it, they would have 1 or 2 people behind them who would be hammering on the end of it. So hammering into the rock like that. Now, they were trying to get a hole which goes about 1 metre into the rock. And it might take 8 hours to drill a hole that far. So this was lots of heavy work. Once they had drilled that hole, they would stick some gunpowder into the bottom of it, and then put in a fuse, like a piece of string. One end goes in the gunpowder, the other end coming out from the hole. They would set fire to that fuse, and that would slowly burn its way down until it caught fire to the gunpowder. Then that would explode and break the rock. It made things a bit quicker, because a month's work like that could get a miner a tunnel from where I'm stood here, using gunpowder, drilling by hand. A month would get them to about here. So about 5 times as fast as what they were doing before. Next big change came when people started to invent machines they could use. You got machines like this one here. And this is a rock drill. A much quicker, much easier way to make holes in the rock. These are using a machine. So working with a drill like that, things became even quicker. A month's work with one of those could get a tunnel longer than this whole train. So it was getting a lot quicker. So that's a bit about how they were digging, how that changed over time. When they were working here, the mine would have been very different. First, when they were working here, there was no railway, no train. The railway was put in just for bringing visitors into the mine. When they did that, they had to make lots of the tunnels bigger so they could fit the train in. When people were working down here, they were just walking in, using wheelbarrows to move things, and didn't need big tunnels like this. It's much smaller tunnels, no train. Some tunnels would be very, very wet. People would be walking in water, working in wet clothes. There would be lots of dust in the air that people were breathing in. So not very nice and not very good for them, breathing in dust. Also, back when this mine was open, they had no electric lights. So all the work they were doing was all being done by candlelight. So if I light a candle, we can find out what it was like. Light a candle, switch off the electric lights. And there we are. So yes, working by candlelight. You can see it's not a lot of light to be able to see what you were doing and where you were going. So they were working in quite dark conditions. We're going to move on a bit further. As we go round this next corner, if you look out on the left-hand side, so over this side of the train, you can see one of the tunnels which has not been made any bigger. You'll be able to see the small spaces they were working in. Because the other thing about working by candlelight was candles can quite easily be knocked over or blown out, which then leaves them completely in the dark.
Pero déjame a mí que yo estoy más al lado. Déjame a mí.
Yes, here we have some more models of miners who stopped for their lunch. You can see one of them is very young. When this mine was working, it was normal for a lot of children to start work at about the age of 7 or 8 years old, starting at quite a young age. Now, at 7 or 8 years old, they wouldn't send people down to work underground in the mine. At that age, they would start work on the surface and would be sorting through the bits of rock, separating the bits with the copper in away from the rest of it. When they got a bit older, they would get heavier jobs to do. At the age of 10 or 11, boys would start to come down underground to work. And that was just boys. Girls and women never worked underground in the mines of Devon and Cornwall. But they would carry on working out on the surface and go on to heavy jobs like breaking up the rock that was coming out. So working with hammers to break up the rock. So it was still heavy work. People would be working up to 12 hours a day, so long days. And they would work 6 days a week, get Sunday off so they could go to church, work the other 6 days. So this was a lot of work going on for people from quite a young age. So that's a bit about the people who were working here. We'll move on a bit further. This is doing here. Well, one of the big problems in digging mines is water. As they dig deeper into the ground, more and more water starts to fill up their tunnels. Nowadays, all of the mine below this bit is completely flooded. It's completely full of water. When they were working down there, they had to have a way to get water from the bottom of the mine, about 100 metres below us. They had to get water from there up and out of the mine. So they would dig a shaft, so a tunnel going straight down, right down to the bottom of the mine. Inside that shaft would be pumps, so machines that could lift the water up. To power those pumps, to get them working, they would use a water wheel like this one. This chain, which is attached to the wheel, which comes off over my head, would be attached onto the pumps. When the water wheel turns, it moves that chain backwards and forwards. So that was pulling and pushing on the pumps, getting them working, getting them lifting the water out. So if I switch this on, let some water in from the surface onto the top of the water wheel, starts to push it round, which then moves that chain.
Me está cayendo todo. Me está mojando entero.
Oh, just in front of where we are, we're going to go through the middle of one of the shafts from this mine. You can't see much looking down through it. It's dark and full of water. Looking up, you can see daylight above us. You can see how far underground that bit of the mine is, just in front of where we are.
Creo que debemos de cambiar con ellos la pista mejor, porque yo no quiero la pista.
In the year 1868, after 150 years, they had dug out all the easy to find, easy to reach bits of copper, it was getting harder and harder to find enough copper in there to make any money. So the mine eventually closed. Lots of the other mines in this area closed at about the same time, because there were lots of mines around here. Just from where we are, if you look on the hill in front of us, there's a chimney on top of there. There was a mine up next to that chimney. There was another mine in between here and the chimney. There was another mine going into the hill on the other side of the river. There was another mine underneath the car park where your coach is parked. There were lots and lots of mines around here. Would have looked very, very different. All these busy mines, lots of boats going backwards and forwards along the river. Lots of the trees would be cut down so they could use the wood and make space for things. Then next to the river would be busy quaysides where they were loading and unloading things from the boats. So it all would have looked very, very different. Not like this peaceful, tree-covered valley that we have now. Well, that really is about it from me. Are there any questions? Anything else you'd like to know?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm going to move from that end of the train to the other end, and we will go back along next to the river, back to where we started.
Vale.
Estoy temblando, tío.
Y no, que ahora vamos a pasar.
¡Venga!
¡Señora!